I live in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. It's nothing fancy, just a few rooms, dimly lit by the flickering streetlights outside. I've always liked the quiet here. Or I did, until that night. It started like any other evening. I came home late, tired from work, threw my bag on the couch, and slumped down. The glow from my laptop filled the room as I mindlessly scrolled through news articles. Nothing interesting, just the usual stuff. By the time I realized how late it was, the clock on my wall showed 1:47 a.m. I got up, stretched, and turned off the lights, leaving only the faint yellowish glow from the lamp in the corner. As I moved to the bedroom, a strange chill crawled up my spine. I paused in the hallway, listening. Wind? No, it wasn't windy tonight. I brushed it off as exhaustion. As I walked into the bedroom, something felt off. I couldn't quite place it, but the air felt thicker, heavier, as if I wasn't alone. I tried to ignore the feeling, but as I lay down, it wouldn't leave me. Then I heard it. A faint, barely there tapping sound coming from the kitchen. My breath hitched. It wasn't loud, more like the soft, deliberate tapping of someone lightly drumming their fingers on a table. I sat up, my heart starting to race. The sound stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Probably just the pipes. I thought. Maybe a neighbor. I tried to push the thought away, but it lingered in the back of my mind, gnawing at me. Minutes passed. Zilengse. Just as I started to relax again, I heard the tapping once more, this time louder. More persistent. 3 distinct taps. Tape. 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 It was coming from the kitchen, definitely. I got up, my feet hitting the cold floor as I slowly made my way toward the sound. My apartment is small. The kitchen is just a few steps away from the bedroom. But every step felt like miles. I reached the doorway, and there it was. Nothing. The kitchen was dark, just as I'd left it. I flicked the light on. Everything was where it should be. The counter was clean, the chairs pushed in, the sink empty. No one was there. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. The window. It was open. Not wide open, just enough for a breeze to slip through. I walked over and shut it, my hand trembling slightly. I didn't open it, I thought. I never opened the kitchen window. Before I could dwell on it, a loud thud echoed from the living room. I froze. Something, was in the apartment with me. I turned slowly, every muscle in my body screaming for me to run, but I couldn't. My legs felt like lead. There, at the edge of the hallway, just out of sight, I heard a faint shuffle. Like someone dragging their feet. Hello. My voice was barely above a whisper, trembling with fear. No answer. The shuffle came again, closer this time. I backed up, feeling the counter behind me, my breath shallow and quick. I knew I should move, do something, but my body wouldn't cooperate. And then, from the darkness of the hallway, something stepped into view. A shadow, a figure tall and gaunt, its limbs unnaturally long. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if it knew I was too scared to react. My heart pounded so loudly in my chest that I thought it might burst. It stood there, just staring. I couldn't see its face, just the outline of its twisted body in the dim light. But I could feel it watching me. My skin prickled, and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I finally found the strength to move. I backed up further, hitting the wall, my fingers searching for something, anything, to defend myself. My hand closed around a knife from the counter, and I gripped it tightly. The figure took another step forward. Its presence filled the room, suffocating me with a sense of dread so thick I could barely breathe. I raised the knife, my hand shaking violently. Stay back. I shouted, though the words came out weak and desperate. It didn't stop. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and for a brief second, the room was bathed in light. That's when I saw it, its face. Pale, hollow eyes stared at me from a twisted, grotesque visage. Its mouth hung open, unnaturally wide, as if it were silently screaming. Then the lights went out, plunging me into darkness. I could hear it now. Breathing. Heavy, rasping breaths, right next to me. I swung the knife wildly, but I hit nothing. Panic took over, and I bolted toward the door, nearly tripping over my own feet in the process. I made it to the front door and yanked it open, not daring to look back. I sprinted down the hallway of the building, my heart pounding in my ears, my mind racing with terror. When I finally reached the street, I looked back up at my apartment window. The light was still off. The silence was overwhelming. But I knew. It was still there. It's 2:13 a.m. I know because I've been watching the clock, waiting for something, anything, just to make sense. I moved into this old house 3 days ago. It's small, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights flicker more than they stay on. The realtor mentioned it had charm, but I think that was just code for old and creaky. I didn't care. I needed the space, and I got it for cheap. Tonight though, tonight feels different. I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore the persistent creaks coming from the floorboards just outside my door. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, old wood expanding in the night air, but it's been happening too regularly. Every few minutes, there's this slow, deliberate sound. Like someone's taking their time, walking just outside my bedroom. Step. Pause. Step. I convince myself it's my mind playing tricks on me. That's what people say, right? You're tired, you're stressed, you hear things. But I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. I get up, flicking on the light. The soft yellow glow fills the room, and for a second, I feel better. Safe. But then I notice something, my bedroom door. It's open. I always close my door. I walk over, peer out into the hallway, and my heart drops. There's a shadow at the far end of the hall, just standing there, unmoving. It's tall, and though I can't make out a face, I feel it watching me. I want to turn away, but I can't. I'm frozen, like a deer caught in headlights, staring at the shadowy figure that shouldn't be there. Then it moves. Slowly. A step closer. I slam the door shut, lock it, and back away until my legs hit the edge of the bed. I grab my phone from the nightstand and fumble with it, my hands trembling as I dial 911. No signal. That's impossible. I had full bars a minute ago. Another sound, the door handle. It's turning, softly at first, then more forcefully, like something is testing the lock. I grab the bedside lamp and hold it like a weapon, my back pressed against the far wall. The door starts to rattle now harder, shaking in its frame. My heart pounds in my chest. My mind races, desperately trying to come up with an explanation, but none of them make sense. The rattling stops. Silence. I stand there for what feels like hours, listening, waiting. Then from outside the door, I hear it, a whisper. Just one word, drawn out and low. Come. It's not a voice I recognize. It's too deep, too cold. I hold my breath, clutching the lamp tighter, and take a step toward the door. My hand reaches for the knob. I have to know. I have to open it. But just as I touch the handle, there's a loud crash from the other side. Something slams against the door, so hard it shakes the walls. The lamp falls from my hand, shattering on the floor. I don't think. I just run, across the room, out the window, and into the cold night air. I don't stop until I'm halfway down the street, gasping for breath, looking back at the house. The door is wide open. And standing in the doorway, illuminated by the flickering streetlight, is the shadow, watching. It's strange how quiet the world gets when you're alone at night. The kind of quiet that feels alive, like it's listening. I never believed in ghosts or any of that supernatural nonsense, but that night changed everything for me. I had just moved into my new apartment. The building wasn't old, just a typical place in the city, small, cramped, but affordable. The walls were thin, the neighbors polite but distant, and the floors creaked a little too much for my liking. Still, it was mine. I had spent the whole day unpacking, arranging things just how I wanted. By the time night fell, I was exhausted. I collapsed onto the couch, my body aching from moving boxes. The hum of the fridge was the only sound breaking the stillness. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, almost hypnotic. It was nearing midnight, and I figured I should get some rest. But before I could drag myself to bed, I noticed something strange. Mirror. I had hung a large mirror in the hallway, right across from the entrance. It was one of those tall vintage ones with an ornate frame that I'd found in a secondhand shop. I liked how it looked, but now in the dim light, something about it unsettled me. I stared at it, and for a moment, I swore I saw something move behind me in the reflection. Just a flicker, something dark, a shadow passing by. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly turned around. But there was nothing. Just the hallway stretching out, empty and still. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and laughed at myself. Just nerves, I thought. Moving into a new place always made me jumpy. But that uneasy feeling stayed with me as I turned off the lights and headed for bed. Lying in the dark, I couldn't shake the image of the mirror. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flicker again. I told myself it was nothing, just a trick of the light. But sleep wouldn't come. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive even, as if something was pressing down on me. My skin tingled, and I felt an inexplicable urge to look back toward the hallway. I resisted at first, but then I heard it. A soft creak. At first, I thought it was just the old wooden floors, but then it came again. Louder this time. It was the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, like someone walking barefoot across the floor. I sat up, my heart racing. The noise was coming from the hallway, right near the mirror. I strained to hear, but everything had gone deathly quiet again. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. I swung it toward the hallway, illuminating the door. Nothing. But just as I was about to lie back down, I heard it again, this time closer. The footsteps were unmistakable now, as if they were right outside my bedroom door. My throat tightened, and I held my breath, listening. Then slowly, the door creaked open. I froze, the beam of my flashlight fixed on the door frame. But no one was there. The hallway beyond was pitch black, the mirror at the far end barely visible. My pulse pounded in my ears, and my hands shook as I stood up, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. I took a step toward the hallway, the floor cold beneath my feet. Another step. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I tried to steady myself. I was being ridiculous. There was no one here. It had to be the building settling, or maybe a draft. But then I saw it. In the mirror. A figure stood just behind me in the reflection, tall, shrouded in darkness, with no distinguishable features. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but I could feel it watching me. Its presence was suffocating, filling the room with a thick, tangible dread. I spun around, my flashlight swinging wildly. The hallway was empty. But when I turned back to the mirror, the figure was still there, closer now. I took a step back, my pulse hammering in my chest. The figure seemed to move, not in the mirror, but out of it. It stepped forward, crossing the threshold between the reflection and reality. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled back into the bedroom, slamming the door shut. My mind raced. This wasn't possible. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt, and my breaths came in ragged gasps. And then I heard it again, the footsteps, slow and methodical, approaching the door. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the flashlight. The door rattled, as if something on the other side was trying to get in. I held my breath, praying it would stop. But the rattling grew more violent, the door shaking in its frame. The handle twisted, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. Then, everything went still. Silence. For a long moment, I stood there waiting. The door didn't move. I dared to take a step forward, reaching for the handle, when suddenly a loud echoing bang reverberated through the room. I jumped back, my heart in my throat. The door wasn't moving, but the mirror was. The mirror in the hallway, even though I couldn't see it, was shaking. I could hear it, the glass rattling in its frame. It was as if something inside was trying to escape. And then, slowly, the shaking stopped. I didn't move for what felt like hours. The air in the room was thick with tension, the silence pressing in on me. But when I finally gathered the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty. The mirror stood as it had before, still and unbroken, its surface reflecting the dim glow of my flashlight. But I knew deep down that something had been there. And as I stared into the reflection, I could feel it watching me still, waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. And I never looked into that mirror again.